Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here. As you can see, today I have pulled some of my upcycling projects because that is going to be the topic of today's conversation. And I'm actually working on another one as we speak for the upcoming video. There's a little bit of a creative chaos going on right there on the table. As I was actually working through this upcycle, I was sort of having this internal dialogue about what I thought upcycling was when I first started doing it and what it actually turned out to be, and some of the unexpected, perhaps even sad, but interesting realizations that I came to in the process. I know that a lot of you do enjoy upcycles, so I thought it would be great to have this conversation together. And the first sort of hard truth that I learned about upcycling is that it's not as easy as it seems. I do often find that people do think that upcycling is much easier than sewing from scratch. And since I do both of these, it kind of gives me that opportunity to compare the two. And I must say that when I first started sewing all those years back, upcycling was always a part of my sewing journey. Not a major part, but it was always there. I would cut off the sleeve, add a ruffle, things like that. Nothing too big. And back then, when I didn't really have much of a sewing knowledge, perhaps I did think that it was much easier to upcycle than sewing from scratch. But fast forward all the years, and now that I'm really deep into upcycling, I really don't think that it's much easier. It really isn't, because in order for you to reimagine the garment completely and make something useful out of the thing that is no longer useful, it takes a lot of time, a lot of thought, also a lot of experience. And not only you are working with a limited amount of fabric, you're also doing like 100 other things, like removing stains, also mending, patching, and a lot of other things in order to make this garment wearable again. Perhaps I thought that upcycling was much easier than sewing from scratch because it gave me a very quick result. As I mentioned, I didn't do anything major, cut a sleeve, add a ruffle, things here and there, and that's about it. So it gave me a very quick result that sewing from scratch didn't. But now I'm in reverse position. For example, if you remember this blouse that I made from a pair of pants, this took probably 3 or 4 times longer to do as an upcycle than it would have been if I would have done it from scratch. So my opinion about this turned completely 360, and now I really think that it's even more challenging than sewing from scratch. Obviously, it does all depend on what kind of upcycles you do. And as you know, I'm a true believer that upcycles don't have to be complex or super over the top in order to be actually good and wearable and serve you well. And as a good example, this one is probably one of my most worn upcycles ever. And it used to be a dress, and all I did was mend some holes and cut off the bottom, and ta-da! I have a really nice top that I've been wearing a ton since I first did this upcycle. My second point is actually a question that I've been wondering about, and I can't seem to find an answer that I'm happy with. So perhaps you can help me out with that. If you have some thoughts, let me know about them in the comments. And the question is very basic. Do you have to have sewing experience or some sewing experience to start upcycling or not? The reason why I've been wondering about it is because I sort of have like two sides of me that are fighting over this question. One side is the enthusiasm, and the other one is that practical person in me. The enthusiasm, as always, encourages you to follow your dreams, to really enjoy the hobbies that you've been wanting to try. And of course, you don't have to have any prior experience to do anything. You just have to be willing, and you have to have the courage and enthusiasm to learn something new. And the practical person in me says that in order for your upcycles to be wearable and practical and actually stand the test of time, you have to have at least some sort of basic knowledge of garment construction and how it works, so that way your upcycle that you've been working so hard on can serve you for another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of wear and not fall apart after the first wash or after the first time you put it on. I do wonder at times if people actually get discouraged when the upcycle project doesn't necessarily turn out as neat as they have hoped for. And in that case, of course, having some basic knowledge of sewing would actually help. But at the same time, going into this with this sort of fresh mind, no experience, and no sewing knowledge can actually bring new ideas and new experimentation and allow you to look at things in a little bit of a different light, which can be very useful. But overall, I do think that this is sort of a this is a very tough question, but at the end of the day, I do think that having some sewing experience definitely helps. This one is the sad one because I think that as much as social media and internet did bring a lot of people closer and removed a lot of barriers, I do think that it did change the way we view upcycling and even more what we expect of it. So here's a good example. My mom used to do upcycling when I was little, and for her, it was simply a way to make new clothes using what we already had and, using a little bit of imagination, but it was just for us, for the family. Nowadays, though, a lot of everything is made just for the sake of content itself and for that wow factor. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that usually the upcycles that get the most wear in my family are actually the simplest ones. And I say usually because obviously not all of them, and there's always an exception, but I do feel rather subpar showing you for the 5th time on my channel how I made shorts by cutting the pair of pants and just simply hemming them, because I know it's not exciting and it definitely lacks that wow factor. But what can I do if that is actually the most useful upcycle that I do on a regular basis? Then, of course, add to the mix a little bit of that comparison game that comes together with the social media. And I do feel that our understanding and perception of what an upcycle is and what's the essence of it has definitely swayed from what it was, let's say, 20, 30, or 40 years ago. I'm gonna add another sad one to the mix. You know what I've realized? That with decreasing quality of modern clothing, some clothes actually are not worth it to be upcycled at all, which is really, really sad. Now, most of the clothes that I upcycle actually come from my personal closet, things that I haven't worn in a while, or things that need to be reimagined, given a second life. So I don't necessarily go to thrift stores quite a bit, but once in a while I like to sort of go and peruse and see what's there. And first of all, it's not as cheap as it used to be. And second, even the quality of fabric for $1 or $2 just isn't worth it, because you will make a garment and then it starts pilling, it starts fading away, and it makes me think about how everything has become so very disposable. And it also seems that it is sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't really take care of our clothes like we used to, so large companies don't really make quality clothes like they used to because we don't take care of them, and we rather have a new piece of clothing than wear the same and care for the same for multiple years. So it's really sad that some of the clothes might look cute and I might have an idea of, wow, this could become this and this and this, but the piece of clothing itself, the construction and the fabric just isn't worth it because the quality isn't there. For this next point, this is where I often think if I'm going a little bit overboard with upcycling, because I do sort of upcycle everything, everything that I can. If there is a valid point to upcycling this or that piece of clothing, I will eventually get to it. But then, especially when it comes to upcycling my little one's clothes, sometimes I think, am I robbing her of the sentimental value of these clothes that I could have preserved in the shape and form that they are, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and I could have passed it down to her instead of upcycling here in the moment and making the most out of that piece of clothing? And is it worth keeping it? Or is it better to upcycle it? Am I stealing that sentimental value? Or is that sentimental value in the memories? Now, I have some beautiful dresses from my own childhood that my mom saved up for me, and 25, 30 years later, they're like brand new. And I'll tell you this, they are like brand new because I only wore them like once, twice, maybe 3 times when I was little, because as you know, kids grow so fast. So it is really awesome to look back at it and to remember, to look through the photos and hold the same dress in your hands. But at the same time, how much longer down the line will this dress be passed down? Oh, I don't know. This is such a difficult topic because from one side you want to do the best and you want to cultivate those memories and tell the story, but on the other hand, I feel that the value of actual physical objects and clothes, as I mentioned, is decreasing. So what was valuable before and perhaps sentimental nowadays isn't that much. For right now, my motivation is to thoughtfully use and reuse as much as I can. And that might change with time because obviously we're all people and we grow and we change our ideas and our thoughts. But one thing for sure is that we do sew and upcycle quite a bit together. So I hope if not for physical objects, then memories will definitely make up for it and hopefully cultivate that love for sewing and upcycling. This next one is what usually people ask me, and that is, does upcycling actually save money, and is it practical? And I would say yes and yes, but there's a big caveat to it. So yes, I do find that it saves money, but there's a big if. If you actually upcycle what you need and what you will wear. And I find that it saves the biggest amount of money when it comes to kids' clothing, because there, as you know, the clothes circulate quite fast. And just as a very practical example, about last week or so, I took 2 pairs of pants of my little one where the knees were done. They gave up, they were out of commission, done. And of course, the length of the pants was already, inching up a little bit. So I cut them off, turned them into 2 pairs of spring and summer shorts. That's it, easy. 2 pairs of shorts that I don't need to buy, and ta-da, don't need to sew from scratch them either. And I do find that upcycling is practical, but only if you work it into your daily life and it becomes part of who you are and sort of aligns with your values overall. But don't forget that all of that has to exchange for something, and that something is your time. And time is a very valuable commodity, and as you know, time is money. So if you're willing to exchange some of your time for upcycling, yes, it will save you money. Of course, you will need to make that initial investment and get a sewing machine. But if you do buy medium range, simple sewing machine, good quality that can do most of the simple things, then it will probably pay for itself in a couple of years' time. I must say I'm really happy that my sewing journey took me into the depths of upcycling once again. It's really fascinating what we can imagine and reimagine and rethink, and I'm still navigating that world, but I'm trying to do that in the most mindful way and positive way that I can. If you want to see more of my upcycling, then I have 2 full video series for you. One is the thrift flips and the other one is quick fixes and mending. So I will see you in the future videos, and thank you so much for watching. Happy thoughtful sewing and upcycling.